There is a fine line between intricate and convoluted writing, and the Pirates of the Caribbean trilogy wobbles precariously along that line like Jack Sparrow on the fore-top mast of the Flying Dutchman. But there's one scene in particular that's so perfectly written, you're not quite sure if it makes any sense at all. I'm talking about the Liar's Dice scene. For those who don't remember, because this movie came out, oh my god, was it 14 years ago? The scene in question occurs when Will Turner, seen here being a dork, challenges Davy Jones to a bluffing game called Liar's Dice. In this game, players each roll a set of 5 dice, keeping their roll hidden from the others. They then take turns guessing, or bidding, on how many of a certain die face is on the table across all players' dice. Another player can then call them a liar and reveal their dice. If they were bluffing or their bid was too high, they lose. If not, the accuser loses. The challenge in this game is in the bluffing. Each player is out only for themselves. They have to keep their dice hidden and deceive the other players about what they really have, all while trying to figure out their opponent's motives so that they can come out on top. In other words, it's a microcosm of the entire Pirates trilogy, and it is flawlessly written. Each character's bids, mannerisms, and motivations are consistent both with how that character themselves would behave and how you would play that game strategically if you were in that situation. And for each character, their strategy in this game reveals something about their motivation. You just might not be able to tell because it was chopped to hell in editing. In the screenwriter commentary, Ted Elliott and Terry Rossio expressed dissatisfaction that the rules of the game were cut down.
There's a much longer version of this game that makes the rules clear. I don't even want to talk about it.
However, the extended scene is available online, and they even went back and largely finished the effects on them. You can get a better sense of how the game works from this scene, and as Elliott and Rossio point out, even though the rules aren't entirely clear, first-time viewers can still follow along the final version that's in the movie.
I think in a scene like this too, you don't necessarily need to understand the rules of the game because you can actually read the ebb and flow based upon the looks and based upon the even the sort of Greek chorus crowd reaction.
You still get the emotional gist of what's happening, but the whole game takes place in less than 2 minutes of film, which makes following along with every move pretty difficult. So I'm going to tediously break it down with props and graphics instead. First, a couple notes about the rules. There are several variations of Liar's Dice in real life, and they have different limitations on how bids work. We're not told every rule in the movie, but we're going to go with a version of the rules that's consistent with how the game is played in the movie, which means bids seem to work like this. On a player's turn, they have one of 3 options. They can either A, increase the value of the bid and leave the face the same. For example, 3 5s can be bid up to 4 5s. B, they can increase the bid and change the face value in any direction. For example, bidding from 3 5s to 4 2s. Finally, option C, they can keep the bid the same, but they must increase the face value. For example, bidding from 4 2s to 4 3s. There's no instance where the value of the bid goes down at all, and the only time the face value goes down is when the bid increases, so those are the rules we're going with. Also, some versions of the game use 1s as a wild card, but the movie version doesn't, as the screenwriter commentary confirms.
The actual dice strategies do work, but
Well, as long as you're not playing an aces wild.
That's right. It should be known aces are not wild in this version of the game.
We should also talk a bit about the character motivations in case you've watched this movie a healthy number of times as opposed to whatever the hell I'm doing. Will Turner is aboard the Flying Dutchman to steal the key to a chest that contains the heart of Davy Jones, a key that Jones keeps on his person at all times. Prior to the start of the game, Jones reveals that it's hidden under his tentacly beard thing that, oh my god, still looks completely flawless all these years later. Who said digital effects don't age well? Bootstrap Bill, Will's father, throws in at the last second because if Will loses, he'll be bound to serve on Jones's ship for eternity, a fate that Bill would like to spare him from. Finally, there's Jones, who obviously wants to hold on to his key, but he's a cruel man with the arrogance that comes from being an immortal and wretched god. He doesn't just want to win. In fact, he's certain from the very beginning that he already has. Instead, Davy Jones wants to twist the knife.
I only bet on what's dearest to a man's heart, else there's no way to tell if he's bluffing. What a man is willing to risk, or not to risk, that's a measure of his soul.
Got all that? Then let's get started. First up, Bootstrap Bill. By the way, I'm going to refer to these rounds with letters instead of numbers because, God, there are so many numbers already. Cool, cool. Now, we don't see any of the player's dice until later, but I'm going to spoil it for you. The first turn goes to Bootstrap Bill. He rolled 3 2s and 2 3s, so he opens the bidding with 3 2s.
I bid 3 2s. It's your bid, Captain.
This is the safest and dumbest bid that Bootstrap Bill could make in an opening turn. Bidding low at the start is smart because you want to give yourself room to move up. The problem is that he's honest. With this bid, Bill is claiming that there are at least 3 2s on the table. Even without looking at any of the dice, the odds that this is true are a little over 3 to 1. In fact, the odds that Bill personally rolled 3 2s is only 30 to 1, which for this game is still pretty low. It's also true no matter what die face he chooses. He could pick 3 3s, or 3 4s, or 3 5s, whatever. No matter what he chooses, the odds don't change. It would be foolish to call his bluff on the first turn, especially with the stakes so high. So if he wanted to win, he should lie. Instead, Bill makes a bid that accurately reflects what's under his cup. This telegraphs that he has 3 2s, not just that there are 3 2s somewhere on the table. You could maybe interpret this as a double bluff to throw his opponents off, but he's playing against Davy Jones here. Honesty isn't the best policy unless you want to lose. But that's exactly what Bill wants. He wants to lose. He's playing the fool. From his very first bid, Bootstrap Bill is trying to get Jones to call him a liar so that he can take the heat off of his son. But Jones isn't so easily distracted. The next turn goes to Davy Jones, who bids
4 4s.
Do it again.
4 4s. 4 4s. 4 4s.
Ooh, it tingles me.
which is an outright lie right off the bat. Under his cup, we learn a couple turns later, he has 4 5s and 1 4. The odds that there are 4 4s, or 4 of any face, on the entire table is around 6 to 1. But the odds that Davy Jones personally rolled 4 4s is 310 to 1. It's not impossible, but it's really unlikely. Which is funny because he did roll 4 of a single number, just not the one he bid. Jones doesn't know it yet, but he has the only 4 on the table. Yet he says there are 4 4s with such utter confidence. He's upped the bid and switched the face, implying that he doesn't want to gamble on the 2s that Bootstrap did, but he is comfortable on the 4s. At this point, other players can start to guess what Jones really has. If you trust Jones, then you might think that he has 4 4s. If you're a more reasonable person that's skeptical of the devil, you might think he has 2 4s, or maybe 3 4s. Fewer than he's claiming, but still enough that he can feel confident that someone else on the table has enough 4s to cover his bid. The idea that he doesn't have anywhere near enough dice to cover his bid doesn't enter Will's mind at all. Davy Jones is that arrogant, that certain that he's going to win, that he can lie directly to Will's face on his first turn. And he's right. Now it's Will's turn, and he's starting to get nervous. We're about to reach the point in the game where players are going to have to base their bids on the dice that other players have under their cup. The odds that any player has 5 of a particular face under just their own cup is 7,775 to 1.
Never tell me the odds.
Okay, but I'm gonna. Now Will has 3 5s, 1 2, and 1 1 under his cup. Not enough to comfortably raise the bid on anything, but he can raise the face.
4 5s.
He bids 4 5s, keeping the bid the same, but switching to a face he's more comfortable with. He has 3 5s under his own cup. If there's even one more 5 under someone else's cup, then he's still safe. Unfortunately, like most of his childhood, Will's not going to get much help from his father here. It's Bootstrap's turn again, and this time he takes a leap in the bidding, jumping up to 6 3s.
6 3s.
The odds that there are 6 3s on the table is 47 to 1, which, as a frame of reference, is higher odds than guessing the right spot on a roulette wheel, which only has 36 to 1 odds. Now, it's obviously impossible for Bootstrap to have 6 3s under his own cup, and no one else has bid a single 3 this entire time. With Jones and Will focusing on 4s and 5s, it's not smart to bet that either of them has a 3, but he does it anyway. because Bootstrap is out of options. This is a desperation bid. See, if Bootstrap had any 5s, then he could up the bid and signal to Will that he's got some other 5s on the table. It would be a transparent collaboration, but there's not much Davy Jones could do about it. But he doesn't. Bootstrap has nothing. His only option is to throw himself on the sword, bid something way higher than he can carry on his own, and hope that Davy Jones calls him out on it. But Tentacle Senpai still won't notice Bill. Now, it's at this point that the movie starts showing the dice rolls of all the players, which means all that context, all that nuance that we've talked about so far, it's not there for first-time viewers, and yet it's consistent the entire way through. You can get the emotional beats of the story even without the detailed information about how each player is bidding. It's just, I love this scene so much. So now, Bootstrap is expecting to be called up by Davy Jones. Raising the bid higher than his 6 3s, no matter what face Jones chooses, is a risky bet. So what does Jones do?
7 5s.
Okay, I'm gonna need a second to explain why that was a baller move, because that was a baller move. First, the odds that there are 7 of any face on the whole table is 186 to 1. That's an insanely risky bet just based on the math alone. Unless Jones knows that it's safer than it sounds. See, Jones has 4 5s under his cup, but hasn't let that on yet to the other players. By putting his bets on 4s earlier, he drew out Will's bluff. He knows Will probably has some 5s, but is equally sure that he doesn't have the 4 5s he claimed. Most likely, Will has 3 5s. Anything less, and he'd probably choose a different face that he had more of if he could. Jones is equally sure that Bill doesn't have any 5s, because he changed the face earlier. He's no threat at all. With Jones's own 5s, and the 3 5s he can reasonably guess that Will has, he makes the unholy bid.
7 5s.
At this point, Will is basically trapped. He's got 3 options, and none of them good. Option A, he can bid up to an even higher number, which would raise the odds to 934 to 1. An absolutely nutty bid. Like at that point, he's claiming that more than half the dice on the table came up with the same face. Come on. Option 2, he can change the face. Now the rules they followed so far seem to indicate that he'd have to change the face to a 6, which no one has bid yet, so the likelihood that 7 of the dice are 6s is incredibly unlikely. Or option D, he can call Jones a liar. Now, there are some very good reasons that Will can't call Jones a liar here, but the main one is he's not lying. Jones is implying with this bet that he has 4 5s under his cup, he knows that Will has 3 5s, and that Bootstrap Bill has jack squat. Where is the lie? So Will, seemingly defeated, does the only thing he can do.
Eight 5s.
Welcome to the crew line.
Yeah, Will's screwed. He's overbid and everybody knows it. Now, if you understand absolutely nothing else about this scene, the movie wants to make sure you get this bit. It just revealed all the dice rolls right before this. It makes absolutely certain you know how many 5s are on the table, and all the emotional tension leads to Davy Jones's line right here. This scene confused a lot of people when it first came out, and for good reason. But for as stripped down as it is, it's kind of impressive that all that information is still in there if you want to see it on a rewatch. Anyway, I'm sorry, Will was getting screwed? But just when all hope is lost, Bootstrap Bill drops his big bootstraps right on the table with a commanding and hilarious move.
12 5s.
12 5s. Call me a liar. We're up the bed.
Okay, so on top of throwing himself on the sword again, Bootstrap kind of made a really funny joke here. Using math. So given the 4 5s Jones has and the 3 5s Will has, pretty much everyone has figured out that there are 7 5s on the table. But now, Bill is claiming that he actually has 5 5s of his own, bringing the total to 12 5s. He's not just arbitrarily saying a high number, otherwise he'd say like 15 5s or something. No, he's specifically implying that all 5 of his own dice are 5s, and that he's been bluffing so hard this whole game that no one called him on it. He's saying, I've had you all fooled this whole time. I actually have nothing but 5s. Come and get me, you squid-faced pansy. And by the way, the odds that could actually happen are preposterous. As stated before, the odds that Bill personally rolled all 5s is 7,775 to 1. It's extremely unlikely anyone would roll 5 of the same face. But more than that, the odds that 12 of the 15 dice on the table would all roll up the same face are over 8 million to 1. You're more likely to get a royal flush in poker, give birth to quadruplets, or get hit by a meteorite. But more importantly, those odds are roughly the same as dying in a shark attack. I mean, he's standing right there, Bootstrap. At this point, the game is up. Davy Jones calls Bill a liar.
Bootstrap, Bill, you're a liar, and you will spend an eternity on this ship.
And lets Will go free.
The very next time we make bolt.
Of course, Will then reveals that he didn't need to win. He just wanted to know where the key was. And he can steal it later. This reframes all of Will's bids. His opening bid is cautious, mostly honest. His second bid is bordering on naively reckless. Bidding 8 5s is like hitting on 20 in blackjack. But what's the alternative? Will wins, takes the key, and then what? Spends the rest of the time in the brig? Jumps ship? Lasts more than a few seconds before Davy Jones just straight up murders him? There's no scenario here where Will can win this game and take the key without Davy Jones retaliating. No, Will needed to lose. And he needed to take advantage of Davy Jones' cruelty and arrogance to do it. In just a couple of minutes of film, we've seen demonstration of Will's cunning, Bootstrap's concern for his son, Davy Jones' unwavering confidence, and how that very confidence can lead to his downfall. Now, all of that analysis is based on the rules that we can absolutely confirm are in the movie's version of the game. But if we can infer just one more very common rule, then we can actually pinpoint the most clever move of the entire game. And it's this one. Boom. Game over. See, in most versions of Liar's Dice, a player can only accuse someone of being a liar when it's their turn, which means they can only accuse the previous player in the turn order. This could explain why Davy Jones didn't immediately call Will a liar. It wasn't his turn. In other words, no matter what Will bids, Bootstrap can up it. It's impossible for Will to lose. Bootstrap Bill has not only figuratively, but literally put himself between Will and Davy Jones. Which means, before a single bid has even been made, both the Turner men have already won. Will knows where the key is so that he can steal it later, and Bootstrap has protected his son from having to serve aboard the Flying Dutchman for eternity. Sort of. Okay, I hope that one was a little less depressing than last time. I'm still trying to get these out once a month, maybe like in the first week of the month or so. Had a big project kind of land in my lap recently that I might take up a bit more of my time, so I don't want to super commit to a schedule, but thanks to everyone who watched this one and who watched the last one, and everyone who subscribed after that. It like really kind of means a lot to me that folks enjoyed it, and still working on some new stuff for the next one, so hopefully y'all will enjoy that. And not right now, it's okay, sorry. But yeah, hopefully y'all enjoy that one and enjoy the future ones, and if not, I hope you find something else you enjoy. You find something that makes you happy.